GM, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today is Wednesday, the 24th of December, Christmas Eve. So let's get straight into it. I'll keep this one hopefully fairly brief today. And as we said yesterday, Bitcoin likely to put in a bounce, possibly into the end of the year here. Obviously, I've drawn on my most likely path for the price of Bitcoin. I'm expecting a bit of a bounce and then probably a retest, some consolidation to get this market flipping a bit more bearish and probably bringing down the sentiment through the early part of January before probably mid to late January, seeing this market take off and Bitcoin making another attempt at new all-time highs just to support the theory in terms of the bounce occurring soon. We got this tweet here. The next 7 trading days are officially the Santa rally window. So it was down last year, but has only been down back-to-back years twice since 1950. So we can see we are expecting, this is obviously for the S&P, but obviously this is correlated to the crypto markets. We are expecting a positive return over the next 7 days for the stock market. And obviously, this would coincide with me calling for this bounce, probably up to around 102,000 in Bitcoin over the next week. At that point, I think we probably do come down and try to put in a higher low, or at least put in a equal low to the previous lows we've seen really over the last month. We've seen this demand be quite strong. It could be possible that we do flush this level. I've heard quite a lot of people talk about 85,000 as being a target and this week low here. Obviously, the more people that talk about a level, when a level is very, very popular, especially in a bull run, these levels tend to get front run. Obviously, if the market is more bearish, those levels can tend to actually be taken out and the price can actually move further below that level. So potentially we could see a move either into the higher 80,000s, which I think would lead people to call then for 85,000 or even 80,000, or what we might see is people calling for 85,000 or thinking that this is it, this is all we're going to get, and then we actually see sort of a big wick down to lower levels to actually fully flush out the market. But one thing that has been happening or has happened over the last day is Bitcoin dominance has started to reject. So obviously on yesterday's stream, I talked about us, if we could get a close on Bitcoin dominance below 58%, then this could trigger a bit of a bounce in the altcoins. And that is exactly what we've seen. We've obviously seen that close below that level, and that confirms this as being at least a short term, a local high. And I would expect potentially we play out, maybe not all the way down to this target in one go, which is sort of down to around sort of 50% in one go. Obviously, we do need to extend this out a little bit, but potentially we get some sort of move into, well, to retest this low, maybe a bounce here from into another lower high, and then we actually look to make that move down to 50%. I do think over the next quarter we will be making that move down to the 50% level, but like I say, I think there will probably be a bit more chop before we do that. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to sort of draw the path from here, update this. So potentially we see something like this happen. And it tends to be more of a sort of stepping down. I do think when we break this low, we could see some sort of acceleration. So I'm not saying that that is definitely going to all happen in January. Of course, this might get sort of shifted out a bit more into more sort of February, March time. But I do think over the next quarter, it will be a pretty strong quarter for altcoins Q1 of 2025. And obviously, we've spoken about the fact that Ethereum usually outperforms Bitcoin in Q1. So we've actually started to see some potentially some front running of that. If we actually look at Ethereum over the last day, we can see Ethereum has started to push up, whereas Bitcoin has actually been trading back down to its recent lows. Obviously had one push up, but looks to be struggling a bit here. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. Just finishing off on Bitcoin. So Bitcoin currently sort of wrestling with this descending trend line. Obviously, we're still above the value area that I said I'd be interested in buying more Bitcoin. So not really too much to do here. Like I say, I'm expecting that bounce up probably to 102,000 over the next day, retesting some of these broken ascending trend lines. And obviously, we've got the path on here, which shows my most likely outcome going into the end of this year and throughout January. If we then look at Ethereum and talk about what Ethereum's doing, obviously we have drawn these two descending diagonals, and we can see that we've actually broken out from one. The more aggressive one has now been broken out from, but we are finding resistance at this second one coming down here at the moment. So obviously I'll be looking for Ethereum really to break out from this descending trend line and then start to trend higher and potentially making its way all the way up to 3,820. That would coincide with Bitcoin probably coming up to around about 102,000. So yeah, and obviously, like I say, Ethereum is starting to show some relative strength. If we just go over to the Ethereum Bitcoin chart, we can see that Ethereum is trying to put in a low right here against Bitcoin. And if we just go on to the daily, we can see we've now got this sort of higher low in play. Obviously, we need Ethereum to get back above this high here, really both of these highs, so around above sort of 0.041 to confirm that, and I'd say 0.042 to really be certain that sort of Ethereum is set to trend higher against Bitcoin, and the low is now in. Obviously, these are some major sort of long-term levels, major long-term inflection points here on Ethereum. So let's see how this plays out over the next few days and weeks. But Ethereum, again, I've talked about it quite a lot on the channel over the last week, is my preferred play as a long trade going into Q1 of 2025. Solana as well is really trying to dig in here. We've got this descending sort of trend line in play, and I've noticed some people have been drawing this slightly differently to me. So if you actually do sort of the line of best fit and you connect sort of this high along with these highs, you can see we're into this area that Solana is getting a bit of a reaction from. So we've got a couple of diagonals in play now. Obviously, like I say, still the major support is coming in around about 167. And if we look at our sort of daily moving averages as well, we can see the 200 moving averages coming in to support Solana too. So potentially we are close to a bounce in some of these markets. Certainly Ethereum, Solana, I think look a little bit overdone and should get a bounce back over these next few days and over the next week. Pepe here also starting to dig in around its prior all-time high, and yeah, really similar kind of game plan to Ethereum. We're looking for Solana to break out from this descending trend line to then put us into a sort of more confident position that we're going to actually see a bounce in Pepe, potentially up to this 2290 would be the area that I think Pepe would really need to reclaim to then tell us that this was the absolute low. But potentially, I'm thinking sort of more sideways, just going into the start of January. Like I say, potential bounce, potential retest. But all of that in the grand scheme of things will be more sideways action. Just looking at the total market cap then as well. This is something that I've looked at again recently, and we can see really here what we're just doing is coming in for a back test of the previous all-time highs. So once we're above 3 trillion on the total market cap, I don't think there's too much to be too concerned about. Of course, we can come lower. We can sort of dig in here and retest this level a little bit more over the next few weeks. And I think, there is a fairly high probability of that happening. So I'm not ruling out retests or a little bit more downside going into the start of January, but I think things are pretty close to turning around here. And certainly I think the time for selling is probably over. This is probably a level to be looking to position in on, certainly with myself as well. I'm looking to take positions going into sort of early next year, looking to obviously run these higher throughout 2025, which I still do think is going to be a very bullish year for cryptocurrency, and we'll see more upwards price action. Obviously, one potential headwind is the dollar that we've spoken about. So the dollar looking fairly strong here, looking for the dollar to come into some of these next key levels, these next targets, and seeing if we get a bit of bounce, a reaction. Sorry, not a bounce, but a bit of resistance at some of those levels. And just looking at stocks as well, we can see stock market on a bit of a bounce so far this week. So let's see if we get that Santa rally in the stock market, and let's see where that takes us. Obviously, I have said that I do think that what happens in the stock market, especially the Nasdaq and S&P, will follow into or sort of, what's the word I'm looking for, will affect what happens in the crypto market as well. So obviously, if stocks can get back to new all-time highs, that'll be a sign of strength. Even if we reject from there, for me, that'll be a sign of strength that we have been able to bounce all the way up to previous all-time highs and start to, if we can certainly start to consolidate up there above this 50% level in terms of the pullback, which on the Nasdaq will be something around about this sort of 0.382, so around 21,440 on the Nasdaq, then that would set us up nicely for continuation going into 2025. And that would probably mean that a low for Bitcoin is also in here, or at least very, very muted downside going into the new year. So I'm going to wrap it up there. Obviously, this path still remains intact, still looking for a bounce on Bitcoin. Let's see what it can do over the next few days. Of course, tomorrow's Christmas Day. I'm probably not going to jump on the stream tomorrow just because things are very, very light in terms of volume now. I'm not expecting any major moves. Obviously, if any big major moves do happen, I'll jump on an emergency stream. But otherwise, failing that, have a fantastic Christmas, everybody. For those that celebrate it, have a great day, great time with friends, family, whoever you're with. And I will talk to you all on the next one. GM.